Om Shri Sai Ram, Gita Vahini, by Bhagwan Shri Satya Sai Baba, Chapter 21. Worship the form or the formless for earning God's grace. Arjuna, people think that Saguna Upasana, the worship of God with form and attributes, is quite easy, but this is not in true as described. This can be regarded as untruth. This kind of discipline will only be of some help until Indriya Samayamam, or the perfect restraint of the senses, is well established. It will guide the person along the road a little while, but the chosen deity will not condensed to grant mukti or liberation for just this. For he who aims at mukti first give up deha abhimanam, or attachment to the body. Without that, self-realization cannot be attained. Deha abhimanam is the expression of avidya or ignorance. The Atma must be discriminated from the Prakriti or nature. And for that, Antahkaranas, that is the inner instruments, Manas, Buddhi, Chitta, that is mind, intellect, and collection of notions or tendencies, ideas, and ahamkara or sense of ego, have to be freed from Vishya Vasana, that which manifests as craving for objective pleasures based on the stored tendencies, habits of previous births, through dhyana or contemplation and tapas or austerity. When that Vishya Vasana is lost, the individual becomes like the dry nut inside the copra or the dried coconut kernel, which becomes loose and unattached both to the shell and fiber outside it. It does not germinate or sprout again. It will remain forever without being spoiled. Likewise, the individual gets unattached from the cycle of birth and death. That is to say, he will remain forever in that state of accomplishment, that is liberation. Becoming like that copra inside the shell is the stage called Jivan Mukta, one who is liberated while continuing in the mortal frame. To attain this stage of Jivan Mukti, one has to give up Deha Abhimanam, and for that, Nirguna Upasana, the contemplation on the attributeless absolute reality of God, is necessary. If that is difficult and beyond your capacity, Saguna Upasikas can do another thing: dedicate the fruits of all actions that are prescribed in the Vedas as well as the worldly to me. Take me as the ultimate goal, as the final aim, which transforms all acts into worship. Fix their mind on me, meditate on me. I shall then shower my grace and take them across the ocean of change of samsara. I shall favor them with the goal of moksham or liberation. This sought, Arjuna, it is not an easy task to fix one's mind steadily on me. Not everyone can succeed in this. However long the practice, it is hard to keep the mind on me without deflecting it towards other things or ideas. You might therefore ask, have we no other means? My reply is, yes, there is. Even those who show steady eagerness to engage themselves in karmas or acts that please me can experience the supreme realization, that is moksham. Love for the Lord is only a form of spiritual discipline. However, the seeker should not stop with this. He should pay attention not so much to the devotion or love that he has towards the Lord, but to the love and grace he should pay attention not so much to the devotion or love that he has towards the Lord, but to the love and grace that the Lord bestows or on him. He must be always eager to find out which behavior of his, what acts of his will be most pleasing to the Lord, will fill the Lord with anandam. Inquire about that, yearn for that, carry out the things that will secure that objective, be engaged ever in acts conducive to gain it. That is real bhakti. But generally, people do not follow this ideal of bhakti, nor do they think about the implications of that ideal. They pay attention only to the love that the devotee has to the Lord, and in the process they do not pay much attention to the dharma, conducting deeds as prescribed in Vedas, and the karma or actions which the Lord approves or appreciates. This is the reason why Krishna says, karma which pleases the Lord is superior to the karma which fulfills the yearnings of the devotee. Whatever the devotee does or thinks or plans or observes, he should be able to please God and offer everything to Him. He should not be subject to His will. He should be in accordance with his Lord's will. If his idea is the deciding factor, all acts and thoughts and plans are simply waste and trash. The chief duty of the devotee is to test every thought, act and feeling with inquiry. Will it please God or not? The Gita also declares that though a person may have deep devotion or love for God, he cannot be called a bhakta if he behaves against the commands of the Lord or against the dharma laid down in the Shastras which embody his orders. It is in this sense that Krishna uses the word bhaktiman when he declares in the Gita, bhaktiman yaha samaya priha, the devotee is very dear to me. Again, whatever act a bhakta does, he should not feel that it is mama karma or my karma. Krishna says that it must be conceived as Ishwariya karma or karma for the Lord, by the Lord. Usually, people feel that some acts are theirs and others are the Lord's. This is not the mark of the true bhakta. If all acts are felt as the Lord's, they will not be tarnished by abhimana or doership of the action and mamkara, sense of ownership on the fruit of that action. Bhakti is to be identified as the sadhana or spiritual tool or discipline which removes mamakara and abhimana. Everything should be recognized as the embodiment of divinity by a genuine devotee. That is the reason why the bhakta is defined by various adhyatmika tattvams, spiritual axioms, as one who is avibhakta with God, unseparated from God. At all times and under all conditions, acts and feelings must be God-centered. Instead, if you pray when overwhelmed by misery, worry and loss, "O God, save me, rescue me from these," and when they pass, if once again you plunge into objective affairs enslaved by worldly aims and forgetting to contemplate on God, according to the teaching of the Gita, such conduct too is most reprehensible for bhaktas. You should not worship the Lord only when you need something. When the tongue is affected and does not relish food, you seek spicy and sour pickles. So too, when grief afflicts, people seek God. It should not be so. However, this kind of demonstrative devotion is rampant today, perhaps due to the influence of the fundamental hypocrisy of this Kali age. This hollow type of devotion, which seeks to exhibit the strength of one's attachment to the Lord, is unfortunately evident even among great sadhakas and persons who have renounced everything for the sake of Him whom they consider to be their all. For many, bhakti is a burqa, a veil which is worn when one pilgrimage or when approaching elders or when visiting temples. Once they come home, they discard the veil and with it all ideas and feelings of reverence for the Lord. These cannot be discovered in them. Even after the most diligent search, such acts or behaviors cannot be regarded as bhakti. These are but exhibitionist stunts. Bhakti, however, truly is experiencing God in everything, under all situations, at all times, constant, integrated awareness. Many assert that all their acts are dedicated to Deva or God, but their attitude shows that they are dedicating them to Deham or body only. Instead of dedicating them to God, they dedicate them to themselves, the bodies with which they ignorantly identify themselves. They assert, "This is I, this I offer to Krishna." But really it is an offering to their Putra's son. This is an offering to Rama, they declare. But their urge reveals that it is an offering to their raga or sense of attachment or affection. How can these be dignified by the word arpitam or dedication or offering? Arpitam or dedication should be done with the unity of thought, word and deed. Only then can it be regarded as a genuine offering or arpitam and true bhakti. If what you speak is not approved by the mind, if what is felt in the mind is not wholeheartedly put into action, then it becomes sheer hypocrisy. Be firmly convinced that the karta or the doer, the karma or deed and the kriya, doing, are all based on Paramatma. Be devoted to him rather than to riches, wife and children. Where there is abhimana or doership, their deva bhakti or love for God cannot prevail. Bhakti is pure as waters of Ganga, karma is as the water of the Yamuna, and jnana is as the Saraswati flowing secretly and mysteriously underground. It is the commingling of these three rivers that it is called Triveni, the confluence of the three rivers. It means the becoming one of the three gunas. It means Manolayam or merging of mind due to complete absorption. It also means the destruction of mamakara. However, there are many who are ignorant of these basic facts. They dip in water twice a day and go through the Sandhya prayers, worship the household gods, draw lines of ash or sandal paste on their brows, arms and chest, put dots of vermilion on their faces and wear strings of beads and rosaries round their necks and roam about from temple to temple or from one spiritual teacher to another. They circumambulate holy shrines, they attend many discourses, Puranic recitals and readings of scriptures. The best that we can say about such persons is that they are engaged in satkarmas or good activities. We cannot say that they are entitled to be called bhaktas. Bhakti has no relationship with dress and speech. On the basis of mere raiment and religiosity of expression, we cannot call a person a devotee of the Lord. Bhakti is associated with bhavam or inner faith and feelings rather than bhayam, outer behavior or conduct. You can infer that there is smoke, there must be fire. Indeed, there are some types of fire which do not emit smoke, but there is no smoke without fire. Similarly, there is a possibility to engage in karma or acts without bhavam or inner feelings of love for God. But you cannot say that all loving bhavams must be expressed through pompous outer actions. Even without pomp and outer show, it is possible to have bhava shuddhi or pure and sincere feelings. Therefore, bhava shuddhi is important thing. With bhava shuddhi as the adhara or basis, one must engage in sadachara or good acts or behavior. Only those karmas or acts that are performed with bhava shuddhi are considered bhagvat karmas, acts that are performed as an offering to God. Mere pompous outer activities without bhava shuddhi are considered prakriti karmas, ever-changing behavior or conduct, and a devotee of God must refrain from engaging in such acts and behaviors. The question that Arjuna asked drew this further answer. Of course, there are two different types of bhaktas. The Saguna Bhakta, devotee who worships God with attributes, name and form, and the Nirguna Bhakta, the one who contemplates on the God without attributes, name and form, the votary of the formful one and the votary of the formless. Among the devotees, the Arti, those who pray to God in distress, and the Artharti, those who worship God for material benefits, and the Jignasu, those who seek liberation and inquire about the absolute reality, are Saguna Bhaktas, as they are all eager about the nameful and the formful aspects of God. And the Jnanis, those who have freed themselves from the duality and realized their identity with the absolute reality, are Nirguna Bhaktas. Among these two categories of devotions, which is superior, Nirguna or Saguna? Arjuna's doubt is relevant not only to him in his era but also to every person of today. For even today, people engage in debate regarding Nirguna Bhakti versus Saguna Bhakti. There are different opinions regarding the superiority of Saguna Bhakti compared to Nirguna Bhakti. Some even argue that the combination of both is ideal. This results in their inability to reach any consensus or clarity, leaving them in a state of confusion. However, Gita resolved this doubt quite easily. The Lord provided an impeccable response that cannot align with the discrepancies observed by the ordinary folks. All those differing opinions stem primarily from drishti bhedam, or differences due to type of vision or perception, and they should not be regarded as shortcomings in God's creation. Let's look at the following example. Man has 2 feet. How can one determine the superior foot? For all outside activities of the objective world, individuals often favor the use of the right foot. However, when it comes to the functions of the body such as walking and the perception of pain, there are no such preferences. Both are equally significant. Regardless of which foot sustains an injury, the individual experiences pain uniformly. Both feet are equally essential for proper ambulation, isn't it? In the same way, Saguna and Nirguna are like God's feet. So both are important and mutually reinforce one another. It is not right to say that one is better than the other. However, it is possible to identify which foot is the left one and which is the right one. Saguna can be likened to the left foot while Nirguna to the right foot. Just as for every auspicious act the right foot is placed first, the right foot of Nirguna Bhakti must be used for the attainment of moksham or liberation. That is the all auspicious. That is to say, Nirguna Bhakta enters into the mansion of moksham first, followed by Saguna Bhakta. So, entry is available for both. It is not possible to say that one has an entry while the other does not, for how long can anyone have one foot inside and another outside? Even if that were possible, of what avail is it? So, Saguna Bhakti has to be adopted as sadhanam, means, and the Nirguna Bhakti as sadhyam, or the goal to be reached. That is to say, the whole universe may appear as God, the whole Vishwa or universe as Vishveshwara, Lord of the universe, for a Nirguna Bhakta, whereas Vishwa and Vishveshwara may appear as separate and distinct for a Saguna Bhakta. But the Lakshartha, or the indicated or implied meaning of the two, is the same. You may see the cloth as yarn, or you may see the yarn in cloth as separate entities, but whether you realize it or not, yarn is cloth, cloth is yarn. To see yarn and cloth as distinct is the Saguna Upasana, the worship of God with attributes. To see yarn as included in the cloth and the cloth as a collection of yarn and the two as identical is to worship the Nirguna aspect. This bhakti is not something that is imported from somewhere. It is not something that is supplied by someone. It does not grow from the ground or fall from the skies. It is Bhagavad Anugram, affection or attachment or love towards the Lord that wells up from within oneself. The incessant feeling of love that is inherent in man should not flow widely in diverse channels. It should flow uninterruptedly in the direction of God. Then it becomes bhakti. This love is in every living being, birds and beasts, insects and worms. All have love, inspiring them, filling them to the extent that is appropriate to each. Why elaborate? Love is the very life. Life is the very love. Each member of all living species has many-sided love towards offspring, parents, comforts and guards, its food and drink, its joys and plays. Each of these types of love or attachment has a distinct name suited to the objects on which it is fixed. Every one of these types is not called bhakti, it is called vatsalyam or affection or fondness. When directed towards offspring, it is named moha or attachment. When it is directed to the kinsmen, karuna or compassion and mercy. When directed towards persons who are less fortunate, maitri or comradeship. When flowing towards equals, ichcha, desire or vancha, wish. When extended to goods or places. When it is directed towards elders and teachers and parents, it becomes the elevated attitude of gauravam or reverence, vinayam, humility, vidyayata, obedience, etc. But bhakti is a word that is used with reverence to love as directed to the Lord only. When this love is broken up into many streams, flowing in many directions and towards many points, it causes only grief and unrest. Instead, allow the love to flow single-pointed to the ocean of the Lord's grace. This is the sadhana called bhakti. Why waste life in the attempt to reach the salty marsh of samsara? Strive rather to reach the vast ocean of grace of the Almighty. There you realize yourself, you attain Sat Chit Ananda, being awareness bliss. How holy is that consummation, how filled with bliss. The Gopikas strove and succeeded in this sadhana. Every moment, under every condition, every thought, word and deed of the Gopikas were dedicated to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. That is why the Gopikas are called yogis. When Lord Krishna himself recognized the gopis, as yogis, you can gauge how pure their hearts were. Jai Sai Ram.
साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वप्रचोदयात्। ॐ साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वप्रचोदयात्। ॐ साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वप्रचोदयात्। ॐ